KarFei, have you ever stood on a chair before?
Oh, many times.
When Nadal does it, what a loving guy. When an ordinary guy does it, what a creep.
Lower the lights down, hand over my crown, hand over my heart. I do this for my town, I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of the Life Insider Show, Speaking and Influence for Impact. So in today's episode, we have one of the top marketeer in the world and one of the pioneer in the internet marketing industry. And this person is none other than Peng Joon from Malaysia. Welcome to the show, Peng Joon. Thanks for being here.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Nice. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for, taking your time off to be here to share with our audiences about, how you get to where you are today. And most importantly, about our topic for today, which is speak and influence for impact, right? So Peng Joon, let's start off the podcast with sharing with us, maybe, Peng Joon, what are you up to right now? I mean, the past 1 year, 2020, 21, and 2021 has been a very different world that we're living in. What are you up to? What has changed for you? And what are some of the challenges that you've been through?
The most important thing that that I did with my team at the start of this lockdown is I remember that first week when it all happened, right? And the first thing I said in that emergency meeting with my team, I said, the way we're going to move forward in this business is we're going to assume that this thing is permanent. And we're going to begin with those questions, which is basically, if this thing was actually permanent and it's going to be here forever, like some dark episode in Black Mirror or something, then how are we going to think about it? What are the kind of questions we would ask? Because the quality of the questions we ask is going to dictate the solutions that we come up with. So we said, okay, so if this thing was permanent, was here to stay, and we're not going to wait around and hope and pray for the best, but rather just prepare for the best, what are we going to do? So we said, well, for one, we are not going to associate ourselves with anything that is offline anymore. So that means anything that requires contact, in-person, physical location, we're going to completely remove that from our business model. So that's number one. And number two is that everything that when it comes to selling is all going to be just focused on online. So with an online sales process, with an online delivery mechanism, as well as having the team working remotely as well. So my team has been working from home now for, it's been slightly over a year. And that's how we have handled, I would say, the last 20, in the year 2020. But also, that's how we are thinking about things moving forward, which is basically, if we were to come from this really conservative angle, kind of like that worried auntie who worries and is scared about everything, right? Not because we are being negative or skeptical, but I believe that from a business perspective, that is required in order to not just survive but thrive. So that's how we dealt with it, which is basically those three things: online sales process, online delivery mechanism with a remote team and we got to be able to have the systems and processes so that it really enables any team to be able to handle everything remotely. So That was the main change that we did.
Nice. That sounds really good. But with that in mind, I also want to ask you, right, Peng Joon, it's probably not easy, right? I mean, before the pandemic, things are probably doing okay. You meet the team every day, you get things done, and all these kind of different things. But when this pandemic happened, it requires certain kind of influence from you. It requires certain kind of, entrepreneurial mindset to be able to go to the team, challenge the team, get the team to think different and so on. And I think one of the way that most people will probably have used and done, it's you have to talk to the team about it, right? Which brings us back to our topic of speaking and influence. So how do you kind of speak in a way that is able to influence the team? How do you convince the team, or maybe even convincing yourself?
Great. I love the question, by the way. So, well, for one, I think what made it slightly easier is the fact that I wasn't somebody that was seeing my team on a daily basis. In fact, I actually don't manage my team. Before the lockdown happened, because of my my lifestyle and what it is that I love doing, I'm actually barely in the office. I'm not the person who does the daily huddles and all of that. But one thing that changed is actually was the other way around. I would probably step into my office less than 20 times the entire year. You know, the operations manager, everything was taken care of. However, at the start of this entire lockdown, I said, you know what? I'm stuck at home anyway, and I'm gonna be a lot more hands-on. And one of the things that I did was I actually joined them for this daily huddle every single day. So I joined that daily huddle every day, I would say, for a good 6 months. And I think that what was very powerful is that it actually forced us to level up systems and processes. So when it comes to communication, the first thing that I did was, I think that's absolutely crucial, is transparency. I said, look, right now, let's look at reality, right? Reality is that chances are we are not going to be going to the office for a good, I'm guessing, 6 months at that time, right? Nobody knew how long it was going to be, and we said, oh, maybe it's only going to last 2 to 3 months, who knows? But the first thing we said, okay, we're going to practice transparency, and which is, look, guys, everybody's going to be working from home now, and what's going to be required is trust, number one. We're going to need better systems in place so that everybody knows what's going on, because you can't just, nudge the person next to you and saying, can I have this? So it really forced us to be better in terms of communication, in terms of processes, in terms of how the numbers that we report on a daily basis. And as a leader, I think that's where the communication, when it comes to number one, addressing the fear, right? Because everybody's like, oh, so what's going to happen to me? There seems to be all these other companies out there where they are letting people go, they're taking pay cuts and all of that. And I'm actually very grateful that during that time span, till today, we have never had to cut anybody's pay or lay anybody off as a result of this pandemic. And I think it really comes down to communication, making sure that everybody is aligned, understanding what's happened, and understanding that it's a collective effort, that we're in this together, and here's how we're going to overcome this thing together.
Nice. So that's how you transparency, trust, as well as communication to really bring the team together and so on. Now, let's talk a little bit going into deeper about communication, right? Because at the end of the day, speaking and influence, it's all about communication. Now, Peng Joon, I've heard your story many times, right? But I think maybe you want to share with us, right? How did you get to where you are today being a speaker? I mean, you have probably spoken in many countries around the world, many cities. You have done talks, as far as I remember, probably as big as like thousands or tens of thousands of people. Now, how did you get to where you are today in terms of your communication and your speaking skills?
I'd say number one is practice. You know what the funny thing is? I was just being on this call right now, it reminded me of this one time where I wanted to outsource this thing on Fiverr, okay, for my computer game product, back then when nobody who Peng Joon is, right? And I remember that I had to do this recording to meet up with him on Skype to brief him about my project, okay? And the crazy thing is, I remember that feeling where I'm meeting this random guy I've never met on Fiverr to brief him on a project, and I felt nervous. I felt nervous that here I am meeting this guy based in the US, and I've got to explain to him what this project is all about. And that, I would say, that was back in 2007. Okay, so that was my level of confidence just slightly over 10 years ago. So how does a person, and I want to begin with that because for those of you that might be listening to this show, to understand that, right now you could be introverted, you could be shy, you could be scared of people, and everybody starts somewhere. But I think what's crucial to bridge that gap is, first of all, the willingness to step out of your comfort zone. It begins with that. It's just, are you willing to be bad at something in order to be good at it? Now, most people never even get started because they label themselves. They give themselves this identity, which is, oh, I want to be able to do what KarFei is doing. Oh, but KarFei is probably really good people. He's probably, he loves to talk. He's probably really extroverted. He's good at words. And then they'll say, oh, but but I'm shy. But I'm not that kind of person who likes being in the limelight. It's for the people who loves other people, right? I'm more of the shy, introverted person. And because they give themselves that label, they live and they want that label to be right. Therefore, they do nothing about it. So if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking about, speaking or getting a message out there or being a better communicator or speaker, the first step I would say is, are you willing to be bad at something in order to be good at it? And are you willing to step out of your comfort zone? That's the first step that really begins this entire thing.
Well, Peng Joon, I like that you mentioned about labeling, right? And I do think that labeling is a really, really big thing, right? It cuts across not just being a speaker or being able to communicate better. It cuts across every aspect of our life, right? Some people have the label that, I'm born in a poor family, so, this is how my life will be, right? So there's a label that my life for the rest of the life, it'll be poor, right? So labeling, it's a key for us to be able to step out. We need to change that label in order for us to be able to behave and act differently. Now, talking about label, right, Peng Joon, like you are probably like in one of the few Asian marketeers who have really made it into the world stage. No, when I say the world stage, I really mean that, you are competing, in an affiliate programs, you're competing against Tony Robbins or all these really, really big names out there in the world. And there aren't many Asians who are there. So talking about this label, right? Do you feel that Asians are generally more shy and it affects their ability to speak and influence?
I think it begins from our whole culture, education, the whole system growing up, parents, upbringing, and community. And here's the first fundamental issue, which is, in any Asian culture, normally when you go to school, first thing is, if you think about like the reward punishment system, right? It's like, oh, you did something wrong, like here in Malaysia anyway, in school, right? What's the punishment? You stand on a chair. Sometimes you stand on a table, right? KarFei, have you ever stood on a chair before?
Oh, many times.
Many times, right? Many times. So think about it, right? Like the punishment is to stand out, right? And if you think about like also interaction in class, right, growing up, the whole encouragement of getting somebody to raise their hand and speak out isn't really there, right? If anything, again, that's the punishment. The punishment is you are going to stand out and you are going to be, and if you think about business and marketing and positioning and branding, like, isn't the whole goal to stand out from other brands, from competitors, from other products, right? So the reason why this whole thing is happening, and you're right, that there is a reason why you don't see a lot of Asians doing this, it is really because of upbringing, culture, education.
Okay, good. So and with that in mind, then Peng Joon, what then is your advice for, like, how do you, maybe you can share your own personal story, right? Like, how do you get started in that stage? I mean, you started off in Malaysia and eventually probably obviously, hard work and a lot of determination, perseverance to really to get to where you are today, right? So how do you do that? How do you step out of it? How do you break out of that Asian mode? How do you, when you really go and meet all these people in the US, in Europe, how do you not feel inferior? And I don't mean this from just a cultural point of view. I also mean this from a point of view where people go to corporate setting, right? Like for me, when I go to meet corporates, like almost like 10 years ago, there's a lot of inferiority. I know I'm good, but when I meet all these big names, big shots and so on, it kind of pulls me down, right? Obviously now it's not anymore, but how do you overcome that inferiority in that sense?
I remember I had one friend who told me this thing. He says, and at that time, early 20s, that conversation took place when we were kind of half drunk, so take it with a pinch of salt. But he said this one thing. He said, and he was somebody that was already successful, and he said, you know what? Here's the funny thing, right? When you make it, you can say whatever, any theory, any strategy, and people will say, wow, there's so much brilliance in it, right? And And the thing I'm going to link this to is just about 3 days ago, I saw this viral video of Nadal playing tennis in some tournament, and he smashed this ball accidentally into the girl who was, you know, in charge of picking up balls, and she was like 12 years old, right? Now he was so apologetic. He went up to her, kissed her cheek, and there was this comment on YouTube that says, you know, when Nadal does it, you know, what a loving guy. When an ordinary guy does it, what a creep, right? And if you think about it, yeah, it's supposed to be funny, but there's so much truth in that. Now, what does this have to do with what this question, this topic? It's basically this, right? Is that, yeah, when you're first starting out, it could be the accent. Right now, you know, if I'm starting out, there's gonna be there's gonna be people that, and in fact, my first ever video, somebody actually commented saying, Peng Joon, you have this funny Ching Chong accent, right? True story. But guess what? When you make it, right? You know what the funny thing is? It's still gonna be, oh, you have such a unique accent, right? Same thing. You think about like Arnold, right? Arnold with his Arnold voice, if he wasn't Arnold, it will be some weird accent. But when he makes it big, we'll be like, wow, that is such a unique accent, right? Why? It is because ultimately at the start, you know, these are just conversations that we have with ourselves. Now, whether we think is real or fact or fiction, we always find a way to be right about the belief. So if we started off with, oh, you know what? I have this weird accent, then guess what? You're right, right? But if you start off with, oh, I have this really unique accent that not many people have, guess what? You're also right. And we'll always find a way to be right about that belief that we have about ourselves and our identity. So we got to start off by thinking about, well, is that belief empowering us or is it disempowering us? Because
Right.
we always find a way to be right about it. So we might as well find and begin with an empowering belief. That's how I've looked at this entire thing.
Wow, that's so true. I think it's really important for all our listeners who are listening to this show to really figure it out, you know, what are the beliefs that are holding you back, and really ask yourself that question. Is this belief empowering or is this belief disempowering? If it is a disempowering belief, you might as well just choose and find another empowering belief to become your mantra so that it becomes a part of you that will change your label, your identity, and so on. Now, Peng Joon, you mentioned something along just now, you know, about when you have made it, you know, everything that you say, it's probably going to be truth, right? When you have made it, whatever you say, people will believe it. People will think that it's the best wisdom that they've ever heard, and so on and so forth. Now, there's this thing that's happening. So in the past, I mean, before this year has happened, but the pandemic has accelerated this. And what do I mean by this? We have seen an influx. I mean, I say we, I mean, is I, right? I have seen an influx of people in the past 12 to 18 months calling themselves gurus, coaches, consultants, whatever, right? I will help, you know, join this thing. I'll help you to make 6-figure in the next 12 months, and so on and so forth.
Oh, overnight, not 12 months. Are you kidding? That's too long. You know,
12 months
48
is too long
hours
already, right?
pushing a button.
Yeah, exactly, right? So what is your opinion about this, Peng Joon? How do you, or how can our listener really understand who is the real deal? How do our listeners really be able to see whether this person is real, it's really getting results, it's really helping me to be able to deliver results in different aspects of my life?
Well, the first thing that I would look at, or rather not look at, okay, is how many, you know, followers or likes, you know, this person get, because that could all be just surface level stuff, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I would really look at, number one, is to ask, is this person actually doing it themselves? Now, I think that there's a lot of people who, you know, teach stuff, like you say, but they don't actually do it themselves. So the first thing I'll look at is this person actually a practitioner, or is this person just, you know, selling theory? Okay, that's number one. Then number two, the next thing that I'll look for when it comes to red flags is, well, what are other people saying about this? And whenever I do that, I always understand that I always, understand that what I call the 1% rule, which is basically, if this person has a large following, I understand that there will be at least 1% of that following who will not like or agree with this person as well. So I will always do my due diligence and take that into account and see, well, what are people in general? Are there Facebook reviews? What are other people that has genuinely bought this person's product? What are they saying about, and the results that they're getting? Does this person have a community? What does the community say about this person? So I will always begin by those questions. Is that person a practitioner? Are they actually doing themselves? Or are they just, packaging theory, where it is some stuff that they learned from, some other training or some other course, and now they are just rehashing and repackaging it all? Or is it something that they actually do themselves? That would be, I would say, that the number one litmus test that I would begin with.
So basically, being a practitioner, that is the most important thing. And you also mentioned the 1% rule, right? Really looking at the reviews and what people say. And also, most importantly, also look at what people don't say, in a sense, right? Some of the people who might not agree with them, those are also some kind of indication about what this person is doing or what this person is not doing. Okay, so I think that is a great lesson for everyone who's listening, to be able to really kind of dive deep and research, not just buy into the whole marketing gimmick of, fast, speed, make money tomorrow kind of thing at the push of a button and so on and so forth. That is really, really important. Now, Peng Joon, I've always been fascinated by your story, right? Like, you started speaking on stage a long time ago, and you mentioned this story that where you were speaking on stage and you were trying to, give as much value as you can, you give all you have, and then you try to sell them a product, and then literally, as far as I remember, no one buy, right? Like in that seminar, I think
totally bombed
or something, yeah. Right? How do you move on from that, right? Like, how do you be able to kind of like look into yourself at the time, completing that talk, and look at, like, I've bombed. This is literally, terrible. I don't know, like whatever you were saying then, right? How do you get over that? And how do you then get on the stage again to be able to deliver your best?
Okay, so to put things into context, so this was one of my first big events. This was in Singapore. There was 900 people there. And one of the things about this whole speaking world is that many of these gigs, it's not like a keynote thing. You have to make an offer, and you got to sell something on these stages where it's a split percentage of the profit. So at this first event, after attending, a couple of speaker training events, I wanted to put it into test and see what happens. And what happened was, long story short, nobody bought anything, right? So what did I do? Well, first of all, I was actually ready to quit. That was when that event, I already told myself that, oh, you know what? I proved it to myself that speaking is not for me. And at that point in time, I actually thought, you know what? I probably am a much better marketer being anonymous behind the scenes rather than, being out there. And it was really set in stone. I was not going to do it again until I had this conversation with one of the founders of the organization, who told me that, he has seen many speakers come and go. And a big differentiator, he said at that time, he looked at me in the eye, he said, it is a moment like this when an average speaker will quit.
Wow.
And I thought that was very powerful, because it's like, wow, if I quit now, I'm just like any other guy who comes on the stage like this. And this is where I think one moment of decision can be so powerful. That was when it was just a decision. And I know sometimes it sounds stupid, when people say, Peng Joon, how? A lot of people say, how? How do you, execute this? How do you do this? What's the strategy for this? Sometimes the how is just one word, and it's decide. Begins with decision. And I just, like that, decided that, you know what? I'm never going to quit until I become world-class at this. And that was it. I just, continued going for every single speaker training out there. I attended every workshop, seminar on marketing, sales, persuasion, personal development, you name it. Okay. Um, if you guys are listening to the podcast, you guys probably will not be able to see this, but in my backdrop, you see all these files up there. All these files are actually different, and there's a lot down there as well. All these files in my backdrop, a lot of them, they're all just notes from workshops and seminars that I've spent easily over $1 million on in the last 1 year, whether it's on masterminds, trainings, coachings, hiring consultants, working with the best of best. I've attended them all back in the day, and that's how I got good, by just that hunger. And it began with that decision that I'm going to spend my time, focus, energy, and resources to become really good at this.
Wow, that it's really, I really like it, because there's a lot of speakers out there who will come and tell you, oh, I've, when that bad thing happened, I do this, and I do this in order for me to get to where I am today. But for you, it is really that moment of decision, which I like, because at the end of the day, nothing is going to change if you don't make a decision about anything, right? So you made a decision that, and you put in a different label. You made a decision on the label that you want to have, which is, I'll keep doing this until I become world-class. And obviously you are where you are right now, world-class internet marketer and speaker in helping businesses to grow, and so on and so forth. Now, speaking about learning, Peng Joon, speaking about learning, I know, you've been learning a lot and so on, but this is also something that I noticed in a lot of people. A lot of people keep on buying programs, going for seminars, attending programs. But number one, statistics have shown that people who buy online programs, only 5% actually finish the program, right? Number two, people who attended seminars, 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, whatever days, how many days of the seminar is, right? They probably leave the seminar and then go back to their life, pretty much motivated for a day, maybe a week, and then everything starts to go back to their business as usual, normal day. How do you balance between learning and implementing?
I love this question. Okay, so my iPad over here, every single time I attend a training, so before the iPad was around, every time I took notes, on the last page of my book, I would always have this to-do list. And that would be the most important thing for me. So every time I'm in training, yes, it's easy to be pumped up and motivated and inspired. And exactly like you said, 1 week after, nothing happens. Okay. Happened to me tons of time as well, right? Like I've got all these different trainings. Were there trainings that was absolutely amazing where I did absolutely nothing? 100%, right? So in order to minimize the odds of that happening, number one, I have this to-do list. It's an action plan, and I'll always look through it and revise. And at the end of the event, and I'll pick and highlight the ones that's most applicable to me. Same thing for when I attend like high-level masterminds. When about these high-level masterminds and everybody's sharing the different ideas, I constantly tell myself, I'm not there to learn. I'm there to execute. So if I hear something that is good, like at night, like that night itself, I will go do that thing. Okay. While you still have that momentum and the fire, go do it. Okay. So that's number one. Okay. Think about the actionable steps rather than focusing on learning. Think about implementing. Okay. Number two would be this. Number two is that just because something has a 5% success rate, like you mentioned, or an implementation rate, it doesn't mean that thing is a bad or ineffective thing. And that's a very important thing to identify. Because a lot of times people say, oh, but Peng Joon, I heard it's a scam because, the success rate is really low, right? And most people associate to whether a thing works or not being based on the success rate. But that logic is actually flawed. Here's why. Because if that was the case, that means, well, first of all, is NBA a scam? The odds of somebody really making it into NBA is probably less than 1%. Is American Idol a scam? Right? What are the odds of somebody going in with high hopes and dreams and wanting to make it and actually winning or at least being a top 5, right? Extremely low. So the first thing we got to understand is anything great in life is already an extremely low probability or success rate. But it doesn't mean that it's ineffective. It doesn't mean that it's a scam. It doesn't mean that it's not worth it. It just means that you got to rise above. So what do you need to do on your end to rise above and beat the odds, rather than saying, oh, this, right? So think thread meals. What are odds of somebody, losing weight and getting 6-pack abs and getting the body of their dreams through a thread meal? Is the odds of that low? Yeah, right. But does it mean that thread meal is not an effective tool? It's just a tool. Whether it's effective or not, it just comes back down to the person that is using it, right? So that's how I think about trainings and courses and tools. I don't look at the odds. Sure, I mean, the odds are important, but I think about how can I rise above? Because the path to greatness has always a low probability of success.
And I think I also wanted to add on to that is that at the end of the day, right, success basically is failing many more times. And this is something that I learned from, the founder of Google Glass, right? Tom Chi. He said that the probability of success, that's essentially the formula of success is very simple. Increase the rate of failure, right? Which goes back to your first point, right, Peng Joon, is that when you learn, go and make sure that at the end of the day, it's all about execution. It's not about executing the perfect strategy. It's not about executing the perfect plan. It's all about executing what feels right for you at the time and see if it works. If it doesn't work, you change, you pivot, and that helps you to increase your rate of success in anything that you do, right? Business, career, financial, and so on and so forth. Now, let's take a step back and come back to this topic on speaking and influence, right, Peng Joon? I mean, we have talked about being a speaker on stage and so on and so forth. And one thing that I noticed about you and your program as well is that you have really diverse group of people coming to your programs, right? People who are in the corporate world, people who are, starting their new businesses, people who already have an established business and so on and so forth. All this group of people kind of come to some form, one way or another, your programs, right? Now, how can people who are not a speaker, not a trainer, right, be influenced in what they do? How can they be in an influence in what they do by speaking or by being who they are and so on? How do you advise people to be able to become an influence in what they do?
To get good, I think step number 1 is to realize that when you want to be able to influence people in your craft, in any market, you could be an architect, you could be a lawyer, you could be, a ballet dancer, a gymnast. If you want to be able to influence and to persuade others, step number 1 is not so much about communicating well. Yeah, communicating well is good, but it's an added bonus. But think about this. You could be a horrible communicator, but you could communicate just by allowing your work and the quality of your work do the talking. So number 1 is to get good at your craft, right? Focus on getting good first, because your work is going to dictate. And by the way, sometimes it doesn't need to be work. It could be how you show up, right? I think that, when I was attending all these different personal development training programs, and I was trying to get, some close friends to attend as well, some of them would say, oh, this is, some cult training, they go in there and they're going to brainwash you with all these, positivity, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And what some of them that eventually did go for these trainings that I recommended, they told me that they attended them not because I persuaded them to go, but because they said, hey, you know what? I did see the difference in the way you showed up. And that was what got them that influenced them to make that decision. So what does it mean? It means that I think the biggest part of influence is not words. Words is the secondary layer, but it's first the unspoken. It's just letting how you show up, your work dictate how it's going to influence somebody else. After that, then the next thing to work on, of course, would be the communication of it.
Right. So and this is exactly what most people need to hear, because when you see people who say that, I'm not good, I'm not a good speaker, oh, I can't speak on stage and all these things, most of the time what they do is they will go and work on their communication skills first.
Yeah,
Toastmasters.
and the example I'll give would be somebody like Jack Ma, right? Is Jack Ma an amazing speaker? Why do people listen to him? Is it because he's an amazing speaker? No, because he's good at what he does and because he's a billionaire, right? So you could be somebody that, I mean, think about it this way, right? Somebody that, I don't know, draws and designs stuff well, right? You could go on stage and literally just point to the painting and say, "This painting nice." Right? That's it. That's how you communicate. But if that painting is worth whatever millions of dollars, people will appreciate your work rather than, you know, the choice. That's the second layer to work on.
Right, perfect. That is really a good example, right? The painting thing. That's good. That's great advice. Now, Peng Joon, tell us, right? What are some of the things that people misunderstand you, or people don't know about you as a speaker, right? I mean, right now, everyone knows Peng Joon as the internet marketing guy. Everyone knows Peng Joon as world-class speaker. He's top of the top. He's the best.
I disagree. I think that there's a lot of people who does not know my work would say, I've seen this guy's ads and his ads are really annoying. And that's all they know me by, right? That's possible, right? It's also possible that somebody who does not know my work would be like, this guy is just constantly trying to sell me stuff online, right? That could be the case. So I think it really depends on how the depth a person knows my work. And it's not all rainbows and unicorns.
So tell us, right, Peng Joon, what are some of the challenges that you're facing in your career or in your journey as a speaker, as well as in your business?
I think number one, like based on what I mentioned earlier, is that social media can be a very brutal game. And one of the reasons why a lot of people who get started, content creators, begin and many quit after a while is because number one, things can, you know, get ugly. When you start putting your message out there, especially if your topic is to do with like money or any personal development or investing, and anything to do with like beliefs, right? It's going to be horrible. Why? Because people will say things to you that they will never say in front of your face. Okay, that's number one. So that's the first thing. It's not meant for everybody, and the sad thing is because not everybody will be able to handle it. So one of my goals is to be able to show people that, look, no matter who it is that you meet in life, there's always going to be that 1% that will not like you for whatever reason. Okay, and you got to be able to be okay with it, knowing very well that not everybody you meet and cross path with in life will know will like you or agree with you. So that's the first one. The first struggle is social media. I remember when I first started off, that was something I could not accept. It was hard for me because I'm not somebody who actually likes conflict. And I remember the first time I had this, you know, Facebook page. I set up my Facebook page, and it was, you know, that first event that I did, you know, which I totally bombed, right? But it was a nice picture because I was there, and there was like, you know, 900 people in the room, and that was when I needed to create like a Facebook page because I wanted to, you know, create this profile, right? And I remember uploading that page, that picture of that event, and there was this comment that said, "This is obviously a photoshopped picture. You can see based on this that the audience was there, but this guy here replaced himself on the picture when it was supposed to be somebody else." And when I saw that comment, I just couldn't comprehend it. I would be like, but this guy, number one, doesn't even know me. I'm not sure how he landed on this thing here, on this page here. And I was very puzzled. I was very puzzled because that thing was very new to me. I didn't understand why would somebody say that to me when, you know, they don't know me. And obviously this is a real picture. This just happened literally like yesterday. And I felt so defensive about it. So you know what I did? I actually took like 30 other pictures. And in the comments, I replied, what about this picture? Is this picture fake as well? What about this picture? Is this picture fake as well? What about this picture? And after I did that, I felt so stupid. It's like, why did I just waste 20 minutes of my time replying to some troll that I've never met? Maybe he wasn't even trolling. Maybe he was actually serious. And and it was dumb, right? Now the point I'm bringing back here is because for those of you that's listening to this, if you're new to this, yeah, understand that this affects all creators, especially when you're starting out and you don't know what to expect, because social media can be extremely brutal. Yeah, that's just one of the many things, of course, that comes with, building and growing any business.
Wow. And Peng Joon, that really hits home, because last week, actually just last week, I mean, I can say that I finally made it, like just last week, my team posted something on Facebook, and then there's a couple of comments. I mean, I think there are like 20, 30 people who commented. They wanted, some of the stuff that I'm giving out and so on. But there are a few who really commented, like, wow, you guys better be careful. Coaches these days are mostly scams. So, this could be another one of those scams. And there's this another question: who the hell is KarFei, right? But even when my team send my LinkedIn profile to him and tell him, hey, this is KarFei's LinkedIn, you can check him out and get to know him, his experiences, and so on. And he replied and say that, oh, that still tells nothing. That's just marketing. And I'm like, dude, if you want to know me and I show you what I have, I mean, my team show you what I have, and everything is marketing, then why do you want to know me, right? I was contemplating actually replying the few kind of comments, and I paused and I stepped back and I asked myself, what's the point? What's the purpose of replying? Just to win? Does that make me happy? Does that make them happy? Is it worth my spending time replying on all these comments? And I ended up not doing it, right? Because I do agree with you, is that, sometimes you need to just let all these people exist, because you then need to use your craft, which is what you talk about just now. Use your craft to show them this is what you do and this is what you're good at, and let your work speak for itself, right? I think that is really important. And so, Peng Joon, what about you? Like, if you could travel back in time, if you could travel back to any moment in your career or in your speaking gig, in your speaking career and so on, what is the one thing that you would like to change?
I'm not sure if I would change anything really. What if there was this whole butterfly effect that made everything different because I changed that one thing, and then this call never happened and whatever, right? So I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't think I would change anything.
Love it. I really love it, because that would be my answer as well. But I think there are some people who there are significant moments in their life that they really would love to change however they want it to be, because they will assume the butterfly effect would benefit them in the long run in that sense. But we'll never be able to. So I love that answer. Last question, Peng Joon. I have seen many speakers. You have seen many speakers on stage, and I know our listeners has also probably seen many different kind of speakers on stage in different stages and so on and so forth, right? Like, Peng Joon, for you, right? How do you identify, right, whether a speaker is a great speaker?
I think that everybody has the potential to be a great speaker. And the way I identify if somebody's a great speaker is if this person just resonates with me. I think that's all it takes to be a great speaker.
Wow.
Not all great speakers need to be, hey, well polished and be slick. Being a great speaker is just somebody that is able to relate to somebody else. So being a great speaker doesn't need to be somebody that changes the world. Being a great speaker just needs to be able to change somebody's world. And that's what makes a great speaker.
Wow. That is an absolute, nuggets of wisdom for everyone. And that really hits home, I think, because sometimes when people get on stage, I used to have that, right? When I get on stage with a few hundred people, what's always in my mind is that I need to impress these 500 people. I need to make these 500 people like me. I need to make sure that everything that I do on stage get towards this 500 people. But I think, Peng Joon, you have kind of really boiled it down. It's really important to make sure that you're able to relate to one person, because that is the catalyst. That will be the butterfly effect that will change the person's world. Oh, that's great. Actually, I have one more last question. This is the last question, right? Peng Joon, what is your advice, right, for people who wanted to start their speaking journey, for people who want to step out and be good in their craft, and using speaking as a way for them to share their voice, share their message, and share their work? What would your advice be?
Find as many different ways that will enable you to practice and fail in a safe space. So what does it mean? It means, well, number one, easiest way could be as simple as utilizing this as the platform. It could be Facebook, it could be simple videos, it could be Facebook Live, to start getting practice. Now, initially, what's going to happen? The videos will probably get like 2 likes, one of them which is you liking your own post, right? And guess what? That's normal, right? That's all part of the process. And eventually, some of these videos, they're going to be, initially a little bit awkward, a little bit weird, but that's all part of the process, right? So give yourself permission to just fail in a safe space. Keep doing it. Then after that, maybe if you want to up the stakes a little bit, you might do a webinar, maybe just where 10, 15, 20 people attend it. So technology and platforms today has given us the opportunity that many speakers did not have, including myself. Facebook Live didn't exist back then, right? So give yourself that opportunity and be willing to practice, even if in a small stakes. Most people are not willing to be humble enough to begin, knowing very well that not many people are going to see that video, that piece of content, but come from the angle of just utilizing that as practice background.
So the key is really about starting small, right? It's not about the moment you step out, I want to change the world. The key is to start small, try one small thing at a time, and slowly build upon. That is the most important and one of the key advice for all the people who are listening. If you want to step out to become a speaker, starting your journey as a trainer, as a coach, whatever that you want to do to be able to share your voice, share your message, and share your craft, that's what you can do. Start small, and then it will eventually get you to where you want to be. Well, thank you so much, Peng Joon, for being here on this podcast and for being here on our show. Now, Peng Joon, if people want to get to know you, get to know your work, where should they find you?
Just subscribe to my YouTube channel. I give out a lot of different tutorials on sales, marketing, selling online, and you might like the content there.
Perfect. Sounds good. So get to YouTube and look for Peng Joon. Also follow him on Instagram at Peng Joon, and you can see a lot of content from him and from his team as well. So thank you so much, Peng Joon, for being here, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And I'll see you guys next time.
So turn me up real